Texas basketball secures an NIT championship win. The baseball team suffers a tough week to ranked opponents. And off the 40 acres, the NCAA Finals are underway.
I hope they get a little bit hungrier. I hope they understand every single day doing their job.
All this and more coming up on College Press Box. Good evening and welcome to College Press Box. Thank you for joining us on your Monday evening. I'm your host, Jaxie Pidgeon, joined alongside Eric Goodman. We have a packed show for you tonight. Let's start out with Texas basketball at the NIT Championship.
That's right, Jaxie. It wasn't the Final Four Texas fans were hoping to be in come this April, but the Longhorns kicked off their New York trip with a semifinal win over the top-seeded TCU Horned Frogs on Tuesday. That win set up a clash against the Lipscomb Bisons out of the Atlantic Sun Conference for the title Thursday night. Let's go to the world's most famous arena for the highlights. This game was back and forth early on. Jericho Sims with the flush. He's been a star throughout this tournament for Texas. And then Dylan Osakowski hits the three. Texas going back and forth with Lipscomb early on. Here, Kerwin Roach in his final game as a Longhorn finding Sims for the alley-oop. Into the second half now. Texas up double digits. Royce Ham shaking some defenders. Boom, there is the jam. Texas pulling away. And then Kerwin Roach with a nifty pass for the dunk to Osakowski in his final game. And then how about this for your last basket as a college basketball player? Kerwin Roach, 360, the exclamation point, and Texas is your 2019 NIT champions.
Joining us now in the studio is basketball analyst Steve Helwick. Now, Steve, after Texas did not qualify for the NCAA tournament, there was a lot of conversation surrounding whether or not the NIT championship win would be impactful for the Longhorns. How significant do you feel this win is for the program?
I think it's very significant. It's making the best out of a situation that many thought was not optimal. I think a lot of fans got really cynical about Texas basketball this year, going 500 and just completely missing the tournament for the second year in Shaka Smart's 4 years here. But Texas turned that into a good thing. They decided to enter with a great mindset, and they put together their second 5-game winning streak of the year. They opened the season with a 5-game winning streak, and they closed it with a 5-game winning streak. And I think they set up a really good standard for the future here, beating out-of-conference opponents, plus TCU getting revenge on a team there. And they just really dominated those last 3 games. They got in the rhythm in South Dakota State and Xavier, 2 close games. Then they just dominated from there, just showing how much talent this team really had within them the entire time.
Right, and early on in the game, there were several lead changes between the Longhorns and Lipscomb, but once they pulled ahead, they never lost their lead. What do you think was the key factor that allowed Texas to take control of this game?
The key factor in the Lipscomb game was definitely the seniors, and that was the entire tournament long, was the 2 seniors playing like seniors, and that's Kerwin Roach and Dylan Osakowski. Roach dropped 16 that game. Osakowski had a 19-point, 11 double-double, and he was shooting from outside efficiently, something we didn't see from him all year long. Osakowski brought the hustle all tournament long. He was on the glass. He was averaging about 14, 15 points a game, even had his career high in the South Dakota State game. And then Kerwin Roach, he brought the energy too. He had 2 20-point games in the tournament. He was all around, putting up a near triple-double in one game, averaging a good amount of points, rebounds, and assists, being the floor general this team needed all season long, and he was finally proving that as his career wound to a close. And what better way to end his career than that moment where he had the 360 dunk. Just like freshman year when he had a great dunk in non-conference play, he ends his career with a fantastic dunk at Madison Square Garden. Just a great end for those 2 seniors in their Longhorn careers.
Definitely ended in style, and as you mentioned, the seniors led the team, and although they finished the season on a high note, what do you think is the status of this team looking into next year?
I want to be optimistic about this NIT win, but so much of this NIT win was guided by these 2 seniors in Kerwin Roach and Dylan Osakowski. But in order for next year, I think they're entering next year about the same status as they entered this year, where they're a fringe tournament team, a bubble team. I mean, Courtney Ramey and Matt Coleman are really going to have to step up in the backcourt. They're talented players, but they're a few talent skills away from being the next level players that can carry a team through March Madness. And March Madness is very backcourt driven now, and I think Ramey and Coleman have the potential to do that. They got a 5-star recruit in Will Baker, a local prospect. He's going to replace Jackson Hayes, assuming Hayes goes to the NBA draft, as Hayes is a projected lottery pick. So I think having Will Baker as that big man, because without him, Texas would really suffer there. Jericho Sims would have to do a lot of the work, which he did do in the tournament. but they're going to need a star like they've had Jared Allen's and Mo Bambas and all these lottery picks manning the front court in the past, and I think Will Baker can do that. So if the backcourt can step up, this is a team that can maybe get back to March Madness. If not, they're a top seed in the NIT, and they'd probably be looking to repeat in Madison Square Garden.
There's hope. Thanks, Steve. When we come back, we will head to the Dish for a look at the top 15 matchup between rivals Texas and Texas A&M baseball. Stick around. You won't want to miss it.
We are back on College Press Box. They may not meet in football or basketball anymore, but for the last several years, the Texas A&M rivalry has remained scalding hot on the baseball diamond. That was as true as ever on Tuesday night as the number 9 ranked Aggies met the 12th ranked Horns at the Dish for a tense sellout environment. Justin Morris has more on the rivalry game.
It may not have been a November football game, but Longhorn fans were treated to a rare Texas versus Texas A&M contest Tuesday night at Dish Falk Field. The number 12 ranked Horns took on the number 9 Aggies in one of the most well-known collegiate rivalries, the Lone Star Showdown. The high rankings of the two teams added to the intensity of the game and made it count just a little bit more. The Aggies took over quickly in the second inning, scoring 4 runs. Texas A&M kept pressing on the Horns until Michael McCann hit a 3-run homer. Add one more run from Texas, and it made for a 1-run game with 1 inning to go, and a comeback was imminent. But Texas A&M made 2 runs in the ninth, and the Horns could not make up the 3-score deficit, losing 9-6 against the Aggies. After the game, head coach David Pierce talked about how Texas needs to keep moving forward.
No, we don't have any time to feel sorry for ourselves. We got beat tonight. We got a couple days of practice, and we're on the road in the Big 12.
A loss like this to in-state rival Texas A&M is heartbreaking to the Longhorns, but the team did talk about how this is very similar to what it will be like come regional and super regional time.
The crowd was outstanding. It was definitely a super regional type atmosphere. Like, it's definitely good for these guys to come out here and experience this and move on and build pride.
Both Longhorn and Aggie fans were not afraid to hide the rivalry and kept the game energetic from beginning to end. Dish Falk broke a record for the largest attended regular season game at 7,952. A struggle the Longhorns ran into throughout the game was on the mound. Texas rotated through a total of 5 pitchers, 4 of them being underclassmen. The lack of consistency allowed for Texas A&M to squeeze runs in when they could and ultimately win the game. The loss serves as a great lesson for a rather young squad. The underclassmen now know what it is like to lose at home to a rival like Texas A&M. After the game, Coach Pierce talked about how the Horns look to move on and the importance of each game regardless of the opponent.
I hope they get a little bit hungrier. I hope they understand every single day are they doing their jobs. Are they doing their jobs at the highest level? And it starts with their minds. And if their minds are right, they deal with it.
From the Dish, I'm Justin Morris, TSTV Sports.
Sean Mapes joins us now to dig deeper into this Texas baseball team. Sean, how much are you reading into this loss against Texas A&M?
It's definitely, it's always a big loss, always tough losing to the Aggies, a team you haven't lost to since 2016. But they did rally back from trailing 7-1. It wasn't one of those rallies where they got it all. It was piece by piece over several innings, which is kind of encouraging. But again, it's tough losing to this team that, you have a rivalry. As much as both teams don't want to admit they have a rivalry. And these games are always close. And I wonder, how much of the hangover effect led into the weekend series. You always have to wonder about that kind of thing.
Yeah, you're right, Sean. And these teams, they, on the regular season, they only get one crack at each other. So there's that. But both of these teams are headed for postseason play. So because of the proximity, potentially maybe a rematch coming up in the playoffs. But this past weekend, after that Tuesday game, the Longhorns traveled up the road to Waco for a weekend series against the Baylor Bears. On Friday, they lost 5-6. On Saturday, they tied the series 8-6. But then on Sunday, as the Texas offense got to a hot start in the first 2 innings, going up 6-0, the Texas skies opened up, a lot of downpouring rain, and they had to cancel the game and scrap that 6-0 scoreline. It ended up being a non-factor. It's not going to count on the records for both teams. Yeah. Is Texas going to miss out? Do you think that elimination of what looked like it was going to be a Texas win, is that going to come back to haunt the Horns?
I mean, obviously losing, 99% win probability or whatever the number is, that's always tough to just have it go away. It's not as bad as a loss, but it's not as good as a win. Interesting, I know. Overall, I think it only matters if, it's, this Texas kind of gets it together and they're in a kind of resume battle in, trying to see who gets the regional, who gets super regional, that kind of thing. Ultimately, I don't think it's, that damaging, because it is inspiring or promising just to have that kind of output, that kind of response to, obviously, the midweek game against A&M didn't go their way. The first game against Baylor didn't go their way. Then respond on Saturday, and it looks like they're going to respond on Sunday with big wins. I think that really is kind of the biggest takeaway to take.
Yeah, the split series, it just doesn't sound quite as good as the series win.
Yeah.
Again, we're not guaranteeing that Texas would have won that game, but they were in a great position to do so. But now Texas has had, if you look at the past season, by far the toughest schedule of anyone in the country. They played over half their games against teams that are currently ranked in the NCAA top 25. The good news is that's all in the rear view because none of the remaining opponents Texas has on their schedule are in the top 25. So how do you expect Texas to perform over the final weeks of this regular season?
Well, Texas, they should, and I think they will look better through. Playing the lower competition, they're just going to get more wins. They're going to look better. Players, going to come out more loose because they're coming in kind of, expecting to win as opposed to it being kind of a battle. Playing the bottom of the Big 12 standings. I know Texas kind of is in the bottom of the Big 12 standings, but they're playing teams that are much worse than they are. That obviously helps. Then they have midweek series against Texas State, Incarnate Word. I think one the A&M, Corpus Christi, or Kingsville, one of those system schools. I think that's going to kind of give this team a lot of confidence as the schedule opens up, and really is going to give them an opportunity to kind of peak at the right time. That's really what you want to do. You want to play your best baseball as late as possible.
Yeah, if you look at Texas sitting right in the middle at 14 in the rankings, they have 13 losses. That's 2 more than anyone else in the top 25. Yeah. So at least you have the nation kind of giving some respect to the schedule Texas has had to this point. Thank you, Sean. And then next up for Texas baseball is a home game tomorrow night against the Rice Owls. But next up for us here on College Press Box, Robert Trevino gets you ready for tonight's NCAA men's basketball championship game.
Welcome back into College Press Box. I'm Robert Trevino. While Texas was battling in the NIT, there was a more fierce battle going on for the national title. March Madness, the annual whittling down of 68 teams to one champion. It was a year without the major upsets early on that fans desire from the usually unpredictable tournament, yet 2 teams still made their first appearances in the Final Four. Let's see who got to Minneapolis, how they did it, and who will play for it all tonight at 8:20. First up, Auburn, with New Mexico State escaping a shot there to survive the first round. And in the second, Bryce Brown with the nice steal. He's going to ice the game against North Carolina. A big upset there from the 5 seed and advancing past Kentucky for their first Final Four appearance of all time under Bruce Pearl. Virginia, Diakite for the tie, bang right there, and they advance to overtime. Kyle Guy, remember that name with some clutch free throws. Remember that phrase. Right there to ice the game and send Virginia trying to avenge their loss to UMBC last year. Meanwhile, Michigan State trying to finally take down Big Bad Duke, who escaped UCF, and Virginia Tech, that huge shot right there from Kenny Goins, puts it away. And Michigan State advances. Meanwhile, the last spot, Texas Tech winning games by an average of 15 points, complete dominance of the West region in Chris Beard's 3rd year. They advance to the Final Four, and that sets the stage for the Final Four teams. Let's go in. Auburn versus Virginia. Ty Jerome right here is going to drive it in, and one. Huge spot right there. Nance Jared Harper is going to keep it close for Auburn. This is a tight game going into the second half now. Kyle Guy is going to find Jerome. Coming off, he's going to send it in. Right there with the nice 3. Looks like Virginia's going to pull away. Not if Bryce Brown has anything to say about it. This was his second 3. Then a nice little drive heel from D'Angelo Purifoy. And who else but Brown again to go up by 2 here. He's going to fade away. Crowd going crazy. going absolutely crazy up in the section right there. Jerome loses the ball for Virginia. Maybe a missed double dribble right there, not called, but he's fouled. Kyle Guy, no, game over, Auburn's on. But wait, there's a foul. Right here, the ref with a bold call with 0.6 to play. Clear foul right there. And here's Kyle Guy. Once again, I told you to remember that phrase. Here we are. Clutch free throws. Needs them all to win. Bang. 1. Bang. 2. Timeout in between. You can't ice him. You can't ice him because he has ice in his veins. 3. Virginia advances to the national championship. Who are they going to take on in there? Between Texas Tech and Michigan State in the game coming on afterwards. So Virginia with a huge win right there. Next we had Texas Tech and Michigan State take on each other in the 8:49 matchup right here. Matt McQuaid going to open the game up early. 3-0 Sparty. But it's Jarrett Culver finding Tariq. Boom! Tariq Owens, the grad transfer from St. John's, opens it up. Defensive matchup right here as Tariq with a huge block. And yes, the halftime score was 23-21. Maybe a Big 12 football halftime score. He, however, would go to the locker room, would return later. And Edwards with the big and one as Tech goes on to a run, capped off by the other grad transfer, Matt Mooney with the 3 right there. He had 22. Culver's pumped up, but Michigan State would not go away. Cassius Winston with the big 3 to cut it to 10. And then Aaron Henry with the drive to cap off a huge run that saw Michigan State bring it back to 1, but Culver, the hometown boy from Coronado High School in Lubbock, Texas, hits the clutch 3, and Texas Tech will be battling Virginia in the national championship just here in under an hour with a big 10-point win over Michigan State. And so, both of these teams, Virginia and Texas Tech, going to take on each other. Both of their first appearances in the Final Four. Both of their first appearances in the championship game with a chance to win their first national championship ever. Both defensive-minded teams. Let's take a look at the matchup that's coming up in a little bit here. The over-under as of 2 p.m. earlier today was 120. I would take the under. Texas Tech, we've seen some offensive woes in some stretches of the season. So the key for Texas Tech will be to keep that offense up. We saw Jarrett Culver, usually the team leader in scoring, only had 10 points, though he did have that clutch 3. However, the key here is for him to get back to the average. Tariq Owens' injury there might play and also a pretty big factor. Chris Beard said that he should be good early on, but when pressed forward, he said he did not have an update. Meanwhile, for Virginia, Kyle Guy, instrumental in their entire season. He's 42.5% from three-point line. And you can't forget Ty Jerome, the junior from New Rochelle, New York. If he can stay hot, he's averaging 16.6 points per game this tournament, and he had 21 against Auburn, but some people felt that his shooting might have taken Virginia maybe a little bit out of it there against Auburn. But, you see those stats right there against the spread. Texas Tech not doing as well as Virginia. However, the spread's only -1. I think Texas Tech has it rolling. I think they're going to figure it out, and I think your pick tonight should be Texas Tech. If you're betting the spread, also bet the under. When we come back, we'll catch up with golf, tennis, and softball. Stick around.
And we're back with College Press Box. Thanks for sticking with us. This past weekend, both Texas golf teams had a successful run in Georgia. 3 Texas women's golfers played in the Augusta National Women's Amateur, the first competitive round for women to be played at this historic course. Caitlin Papp tied for 5th with a 1-under par 215, joining Agathe Lene as 2 of the top 30 players advancing to Saturday's final round. On the men's side, 4 Longhorns placed in the top 10 to lead number 7 Longhorns to a 3rd-place finish at the Augusta Haskins Award Invitational. Senior Steven Cervoni finished in 4th place, with freshman Cole Hammer and Pearson Cootie in a tie for 5th place. The team finished 30 under par, only 6 strokes behind winner number 3, Wake Forest.
Both Texas men's and women's tennis teams notched comfortable 6-1 victories over the weekend. The 4th-ranked men took down a top 10 opponent in TCU behind Yuya Ito at first singles. Meanwhile, the 7th-ranked women's tennis team cruised to victory against Texas Tech. Senior Katie Paluda capped off her final home match with a straight-set victory at 6 singles.
This past weekend in Lubbock, number 11 Texas softball took down number 15 Texas Tech with a 2-1 series victory. Junior Miranda Ellich had an impressive game on Sunday, allowing just 2 hits, walking 4, and striking out 9 over her 12th complete game and 7th solo shutout of the season. Ellich also came within 1 of reaching the 500 career strikeout milestone. Junior Shannon Rhodes led the Longhorns in slugging percentage, having hit a home run in 2 games against Texas Tech.
Now let's take a look where you can find your Texas Longhorns competing this coming week. On Tuesday, baseball is home against Rice at 6:30. Then on Wednesday, softball hosts the Houston Cougars at 6 p.m. Men's and women's tennis both away this week. And then at the weekend, baseball has a home series against Kansas State. Then on Saturday, Texas is back on the football field for the orange and white spring game with special guest Ludacris after the show.
And that wraps up our show for tonight. From all of us here in the studio and everyone in Master Control, thank you for joining us on your Monday night. Be sure to tune into College Crossfire on Wednesday nights for the best sports debate on the 40 acres. Until then, I'm Jaxie Pidgeon alongside Eric Goodman. Have a great night.